Call this meeting to order. This is the March 9th, 2022 regular session of the Schertz Planning and Zoning Commission. Item number 2, seat alternate. We have no alternates. Item number 3, hearing of residents. Nobody? Anybody email anything? Nobody. All right, moving right along then. Item number 4 is the consent agenda. We have a single item on the consent agenda this evening, the minutes for the February 23rd, 2022 regular meeting. Do we need to pull those for discussion? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Chairman, I motion that we approve the consent agenda items as published.
Okay, I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Odom. Do I have a second?
Second. Either one.
Commissioner Ray?
Well, Rich can take it if you
No, I think you beat him out by a hair. All right, so we have a motion to approve with a second. No discussion. I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. 6 ayes, none opposed. Item number 5 is a public hearing. Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing related to zone change requests and replats within this agenda. The public hearing will be open to receive a report from staff, the applicant, the adjoining property owners affected by the applicant's request, and any other interested persons. Upon completion, the public hearing will be closed. The Commission will discuss and consider the application and may request additional information from staff or the applicant if required. After deliberation, the Commission is asked to consider and act upon the following requests and make a recommendation to the City Council if necessary. So item A, SUP 2021-001, hold a public hearing, consider and make a recommendation on a request for a specific use permit to allow a convenience store with gas pumps on approximately 2.5 acres of land, more specifically described as the northwest corner of IH-35 and Cibolo Valley Drive, also known as Guadalupe County Property Identification Number 62840, City of Schertz, Guadalupe County, Texas. Ms. Harris?
Good evening, Commission. This is for SUP 2021-001, specific use permit for what's known as QT 4033. So here is the aerial map. Property is outlined in green. So this is Cibolo Valley Drive on the southern portion of 35, and then, oh, my apologies, and then essentially the extension of Cibolo Valley Drive. But in the staff report, we made the mention that there was an approval to have this named as the Hal Baldwin Avenue. So in the staff report, there is that kind of mention of the extension of Cibolo Valley Drive. However, it will be known as the Hal Baldwin Avenue. Here is the public hearing notice map. We sent out 4 public hearing notices on February 25th, 2022. At the time of the staff report, and even today, we have not received any responses in favor or opposed to the SUP. Here is the current zoning map. So the property is essentially identified by the yellow star. It's currently zoned general business. Here is the comprehensive land use plan. So the comp plan has it designated as highway commercial, so that retail convenience store is what is in line with the highway commercial designation, and it fits within this area. So here is the conceptual site plan. So the building is approximately 5,300 square feet. They are proposing to have 16 gas pumps in total. There is going to be from this side to the what's going to be called as the Hal Baldwin Avenue. So it's going to be a driveway here, and then there is going to be a driveway right in, right out here onto 35, as well as one further down. It's kind of almost off the page, essentially. So there will be essentially the 2 on 35, and then 1 to go to Hal Baldwin. So the property is going to be providing 44 parking spaces. It does meet the size requirements that are set forth in the UDC, so the 10 by 20s. The landscaping is met under UDC section 21.9.7. They are going to be providing 69 trees, so 16 southern live oaks and 53 cedar elms, which all are going to be at the 3-inch caliper. Here are the elevations for the property. They do meet the articulation and horizontal articulation set forth in UDC section 21.9.5. So with that being said, the specific use permit and the site plan were reviewed by the Planning, Engineering, Public Works, and Fire Department. Staff is recommending approval with the condition on the following. A building permit is approved within 1 year of the adoption of the SUP ordinance, and the use begins operation within 2 years of the issuance of any necessary building permits. The applicant is here for a presentation as well.
Thank you. Well, many of you have seen me. My name is J.D. Dudley. I'm a real estate project manager for Quick Trip. I'll keep this very brief. We do have some updated information, some things that you haven't heard because we haven't been here in a couple of years for the Schwab location. So I'll just run through just a few facts about Quick Trip. Our pay scale has gone up. Our starting pay now for full-time is about $50,000 a year, and so that's an entry-level position. So if you start out on overnights or even daytime, what we call we have our 2As, our relief assistants, and then we have another daytime shift that works part-time days and part-time nights. And that position, again, starts at about $50,000 a year, which is 30% above the national average. Our part-time starting pay, obviously everybody's been going up, so now ours is up to $13 an hour. However, we created a warrior position where we have a lot of empty shifts to fill, as you can imagine, and so we have extra relief. We have an entire program where if someone calls in sick, we have extra relief staff that actually picks up, they call in an hour before their shift and find out where they're going to go. With that now, if they work additional shifts and Saturday shifts, some of them can make up in the 20s of $28 an hour to fill those shifts, and they're all getting overtime right now on top of that. So everybody, we're trying the best we can, just like everyone, but we think our stores are operating at still a pretty high level based on our staff, which obviously sets us apart from the competition. One thing I didn't have was the Safe Place program that we run, which actually helps at endangered youth. So every Quick Trip has a designated safe place. We have signage out there, and so what that is, if there's a runaway, any kind of domestic violence, so that child can come to Quick Trip and have a safe place to be put. The employees are trained. We have a spot. We can get them something to drink until the authorities or proper CPS arrive. Last year, we actually helped over 600 kids alone with only 900 locations. So again, we did open, we do have 900 locations. We're fastly approaching 1,000. One thing I always point out, I didn't know if I had this information for you last time, but we actually beat Buc-ee's for cleanest bathrooms last year. They beat us this year, so we finished number 2 this year. but we did beat them. We took them down for a little bit. And what this map shows you is that in every city or every state that we're in, we're actually the preferred retailer. So you see all the QT button signs. That's actually where we operate. So we're expanding. We do have what we call a remote store network program that we're trying out, where we'll kind of go and it'll have a Love's type location, pilot Flying J, so hopefully we'll be able to road trip. Now it's not a Love's or Flying J. You won't have 200 parking spaces. You'll have 12 for trucks. But basically the idea is you'll be able to travel around and always be able to fill up at a Quick Trip and get you a brisket sandwich. Megan, you covered the site plan perfectly, so unless there's any questions at the end, I'll move on. This building is what we call our Hill Country building, and it's referred to as the Schertz store in corporate in Tulsa. In my opinion, it's the best looking store that we have here, what we call ASA, which is Austin, San Antonio. But with the fenestration on the back of the building, the stacked stone, in my opinion, it's by far the best building, the best looking store that we've built down here. I won't go into too much into store security other than to just say one thing. We do put most banks to shame with the system that we put in. It's very high tech. One thing that's different that you probably haven't heard is we actually were commended by the FBI and the CIA because they were actually able to use our footage to solve a crime and apprehend the individual that committed a crime off of Quick Trip property. And just because they bypassed our security system or came into our store and tried to buy something and purchase something, they were able to actually bring them to justice. This is just a quick clip of the security plan we run, so it shows inside and out. Those are view corridors, and so inside and out, every square inch we cover with HD cameras. And you can see them when you go out to the pumps. They're hanging down. They're on every pump, every tree. And then we have the pinhole cameras in the front to catch the HD cameras there to catch anybody coming in and out of the store. Won't bore you too much if you haven't tried our food. I'd urge you to go to try the kitchen food. I know most gas stations have roller grill items, but I would try the grilled cheese, try the breakfast pizza. Our subs are really good. We're using Amoroso rolls now, and we've also got a really mean brisket sandwich. So if you haven't tried our food, I'd urge you to. It's not gourmet food, but it's darn good food. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have this time.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, this is a public hearing, so at this time I'll open the public hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the commission on this topic is welcome to step forward. There's the big rush again. I don't say nobody, right? All right, so we'll close the public input. Commissioners, questions, comments?
I have a comment, not really a question, but the QT is very popular among my teenagers. They went up here on 3009, and I have tried some of the food, and when they first opened, I think there was 39-cent soft serve or something. So we were there quite often. So no, I love that we have a gas station there on the right-hand side going up to 35, and it's nice to go into a place where you feel safe, it's clean, and they have a little bit of something for everybody, you know. So I think it's going to be a great thing to put it over there right off the highway, because there's nothing on that side, really. But yeah.
What's the purpose for the second drive on, or the second entrance on 35?
Good evening, Mike Wooten with Quick Trip Corporation. Sir, are you referring to on the service road?
Yeah, yes.
The Wing Road over there was the Hartman family and the Kilbundy family long-term residents of Schertz. They have all of that property all the way north and west over to 3009. And the purpose of that was they do anticipate further use being developed there. I believe they do have it under contract for another service industry use. I'm not sure the name. They're under confidentiality on who that was. But we agreed to go ahead and facilitate. We have to go and extend sewer that direction anyway, and we agreed to facilitate for their benefit an additional drive.
Okay, excellent, thanks.
How much of this, how much pavement is that? How much of these streets actually going to be paved? Because right now we're looking at a dirt road, correct? Or is it partially paved? I haven't been up there in a long time. What's going to be Hal Baldwin?
So I have the email. I don't have it with me, but I believe it's going to be up until past what's going to be 4 Oaks. Yeah, go ahead.
So the plan originally was we were going to rebuild that road like we did at Schwab and realign everything. And the problem was when we went to TxDOT, they're so far behind on getting the bridge aligned. If we were to do that, it wouldn't line up when they come in and they'd have to tear everything up. So our plan was to go ahead and do the driveway as shown. And what we're going to do is resurface that entire road, re-asphalt it. We'll have to submit public improvement plans for that. And we're going to add a right turn lane onto the frontage road. So we're going to add a lane of a right turn lane out onto the 35 access road so that there isn't stacking out of our driveway. And that would be the plan for now.
And how about that short section of 4 Oaks?
So behind the site? Mm-hmm. So that was required because of where our property line was. We had to extend that concrete road. It'll be just like 3009 behind that site. It'll be a fully paved road up to the property line.
Okay.
Then the idea would be, in the future, once all those road improvements are put in, more than likely they'll put a median in front of that driveway that's closest. And so then we would come back before you, amend the site plan and tie in up to that new road.
But I guess my real question, so listening to you, then Hal Baldwin is going to be usable? We're not going to leave it, okay. Well, commissioners, you know, off the top of my head, if you look at this, it's consistent with what we've done. You know, we have fuel stations on the corner of 3009. We've got a fuel station on the corner of 1103. We've got a, you know, Schwab Road, there's one on the corner. So I don't see this SUP being out of character with what the city has previously allowed along the interstate.
Is this property currently zoned GB?
Yes, sir.
All right, if there are no further questions or comments, we're looking for a motion to recommend either approval or denial to City Council.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of SUP 2021-001.
Okay, I have a motion to recommend approval from Commissioner Odom. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Ray again? All right. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 6 ayes, none opposed. That motion passes. Thank you. Item number B, another public hearing. ZC 2022-003, hold a public hearing to consider and make a recommendation on an amendment to Article 9, Site Design Standards, Section 21.9.9, tree preservation and mitigation to cap the maximum required tree mitigation. Mr. James?
Thank you. So the folks who were on the Council P&Z committee will remember this. We primarily focused on the single-family residential development, but one of the other things we touched on was tree mitigation. The issue, just to remind you, is currently our ordinance requires mitigation for trees removed in certain circumstances. Now, there are waivers for diseased or dying trees, trees within utility easements. If they're not of a certain size or of a certain species, they're not required to be mitigated. And generally, our ordinance works pretty well, and I say works pretty well for the intent of getting developers to be thoughtful about the trees they're going to remove while balancing the need to develop properties. And so I would say in most cases it works pretty well. The area it doesn't work well are heavily wooded lots. So if inherently you have this property, it's got a lot of trees all over it, despite what the developer may do to try to save as many of those trees and yet still develop their property, the tree mitigation fee can be extremely high. We've certainly had cases where it's been up over $60,000 per acre. And this is a developer saying, I'm doing everything I can, but if I'm going to put something on it, what do you want me to do different? And certainly, the larger the property, it's gone up more significantly. So again, we've had a number of developments that have had to pay $250,000 in tree mitigation, all of which staff kind of was, yep, they did everything they could, but inherently that's the way the ordinance worked. So with that, the committee talked about this one, and what was settled on was to effectively cap the amount of mitigation per acre. So I would say that most developments, this won't come into play because they don't have that many trees, they're not having to mitigate that much. But for that property that just has a lot of trees on it, it will mean they're capped at a certain amount. So again, I want to be clear, it's still $10,000 per acre. So if you've got 10 acres, you're still paying $100,000, which is a substantial amount of money, but you're not paying $250,000. And so the way the ordinance is worded, because your mitigation is technically in inches, and then if you pay the cash, there's a fee per inch. So it caps it at 100 inches or $10,000 or a combination thereof. But then the other thing that staff put in that was a question really had to do with if you have a property, so you've got a 10-acre piece of property, the entire thing's not covered in trees, but you've got an acre covered in trees. If you just applied that straight out, well, you've got 10 acres, even though they're only on 1 acre, so you're paying $100,000. And I don't think that was the intent when the committee talked about it. The idea is if those trees are clustered, then let's find some way to kind of define that area. So what we came up with, and this is sort of the best we could do, is that second sentence: for properties where the trees are generally clustered, staff has the discretion to define the acreage of the property as an area extending 20 feet beyond the tree canopy of the cluster in determining the acreage. So it's going to be a judgment call. I can tell you, we'll try to do our best on this, but there will probably be cases where the developer says, I disagree with how you're doing it. There'll probably be cases where P&Z members will disagree how we do it. But if we all kind of go into it acknowledging that it's imperfect, we'll do the best we can. If we have too many of those cases where we disagree, then we'll come back and revisit the ordinance. But that's what comes with that sort of staff discretion that we talk a lot about, is we at times they're going to make a different call than we might have made. Again, happy to have a conversation about it if we think it's egregious or need to deal with whatever. But again, it will have that on occasion and kind of have to show that deference. But otherwise, it's fairly straightforward. I will say that the rest of the changes that were talked about with the committee in terms of residential development, and then some of the others that we've had kind of pending or that staff has had kicking around, generally they aren't terribly controversial. We have one with regard to parking on Main Street that will be coming forward next week. You'll have a bunch of those, so we'll probably try to get you those out in advance to let you look at them, spend some time reading over them, because it will be a fair amount of reading. But none of them are terribly controversial. They're all really intended to fix problems that we're sort of experiencing today due to lack of clarity or things like that. So that's all I've got.
All right, thank you. Once again, it's a public hearing. Open the hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to address the commission? Seeing no one, I'll close the public comment. Commissioners?
We'll go back to the one he just had up there. Oh,
Yes, sir.
my question is, it looks like if we take and deal with canopy coverage on a cluster, like we're talking about, we are in fact reducing the acreage of the property in which we are discussing what their fees are.
That's exactly correct. Yes, sir. That's the point of that provision.
How does that affect the salvage saving of the trees on that property?
So it certainly, and again, I will say this, whenever we reduce the amount, there's an effect with that, which is it's less costly for them to take out trees. And so, yeah, we probably get some that aren't as thoughtful about what they take out. That's inherently kind of comes with it. But I will tell you, we have not seen that to be an issue in the past. What we've seen are generally developers coming in saying, yeah, it adds value to my property. If I can save as many trees as I save, it looks nicer, rents are higher, sell the houses for more, things like that. But the problem often has to do with either our requirements for easements and drainage. As you know, we've talked a lot about residential. For example, we used to allow kind of lot-to-lot drainage. You could run it down. You can't now. That drainage has to come out to the front of the street or has to go to the back to a separate common lot. It can't run through an easement. And so that means to get it to drain appropriately to meet our code, they're having to do a lot of earth moving, and that inherently makes it problematic. As much as folks may try to do tree wells and things like that, it's a challenge. So to answer your question, yeah, adding that provision reduces it, but it doesn't change that it's a maximum of 10,000 per acre. What it does is it would reduce the amount of mitigation paid. So for example, if we've got a 10-acre piece of land and the trees are generally clustered on 1 acre of it, staff would draw that circle around it and say, all right, now we're talking an acre, it's limited to 10,000, as opposed to the fee for taking trees out of that 1 acre could be up to $50,000. Yes, it does that. And that's frankly it does not save the trees, you are correct. Again, what we are finding is that given the cost of land, given the challenges in development, that the trees are coming out. It's simply the developer paying a significant amount for that mitigation.
Yeah, so I think what we're searching for here, and the word I wrote down was fairness. And you know, it's really the luck of the draw, I guess. You know, you've got, and maybe 3009, there's not a whole lot of land left there, but if you look in the vicinity of Oak Forest, you know, over on, if you're going north on 3009, over on the east side, you know, there's a lot of clear property. You look over on the west side, and there's trees everywhere. So, so if you're unlucky enough to have wanted to put your facility on the west side, now you're facing all these tree mitigation fees that the guy on the other side of the street isn't.
Yeah.
And so I think part of the idea was try to balance the whole fairness of that along with these, because I'm aware of 1 or 2 projects that the city almost lost because of tree mitigation and landscaping requirements. I wrote down a couple things here, Mr. James. How does this affect, well, number one, where are the fees located? They're not in the ordinance.
In the fee schedule.
In the fee schedule, okay. Are we, the word I wrote down was clear cut, okay? I'm not sure exactly how the process works. I mean, I've seen it several times, but if I as a developer come to you and I want to cut down trees, there's some staff input there, right, as to, I mean,
There's a
I just come
process.
in, let's say I've got an acre and it's covered with trees, I hand you a check for 10,000, I can just cut all those trees down? Is that?
No,
No,
no, not quite.
not quite.
So we do have.
That's what I'm fishing for.
Sure, yeah. But even then, you can't take them all out. So we have a couple of things in the ordinance, one of which is you have to get a permit to remove trees. So you've got to come in, and you've got to come in with a tree survey. The other part of it is you can't take every tree out. You can't clear cut. You have to leave a certain percentage of the trees on the property. And I think we've got an exception for that in a couple of situations because we've had a few cases, Dr. Bammel, who had a couple of trees, but they are in the drainage easement that needs to be improved, and her problem was, I've got to keep a certain percentage. So you can't take them all out. You have to leave a certain percentage. But yeah, somebody could walk in who owns a property today without a development application, walk in and say, I want a tree permit, and I want to take out all the trees that I can, and I'm willing, it's 1 acre, and I'm willing to pay your fee. They could do that. Now, we've never had that happen. Okay. You know, because what typically happens is our code exempts certain trees if they're in the way of certain things. And so it makes more sense for the developer to say, wait, let me come in because I may need to add an easement here. If I put an easement here, then those are exempt from the mitigation that's required. And they can't just put an easement wherever they want. But we've not had that problem. And so what, again, I would say as staff is, we talk about this, ordinances are imperfect. And we can write them really tight, but then we're going to hang up people we don't intend to. We can try not to hang people up we didn't intend to, but then there are lots of different ways people can skirt them. When staff wrote this based on the conversation, it was based on what we have been experiencing. I don't doubt at some point we will have a circumstance where somebody comes in and does something and we're going, see, they use this new ordinance to their advantage. Likely that will happen. You know, what is likely, I would say, rather than jump to a change yet, let's see if it happens again. It may be a one-off, and at times we have these one-off things that we don't want to jump to a reaction on. But yeah, if we find that this doesn't work and we have 3 people come in and we're going, wow, they found a way to do this and that wasn't what we intended, then we need to come back and amend the ordinance. That would be what staff's position would be.
I understand the second sentence and why we want to do that, but again, running through my brain is this. So I've got a 10-acre lot, and over here there's a cluster, and so you can, you manipulate, anyway, that turns out you apply the 1 acre to that.
Right.
Well, what if I've got other trees on the property? How do I,
Yeah, we will have to make a judgment call on that. So likely if you've got other trees across the property, we're not going to limit you to the 1 acre. This is really, so again, I want to say this isn't perfect. This is really only going to help the guy who the bulk of their trees, 90% are clustered. But if you've got 50% of yours clustered and the rest are spread throughout, that's where this ordinance provision change did not go far enough to help you. It's imperfect on that, and so we'll have to see how it plays out.
But theoretically, it would be, it could be no higher than the 100,000.
That's right, that's
But
right.
It would, so I guess what I'm hearing is, so you might cluster these, and that's only 10,000, and then he pays by the inch for the others, and so it may end up being 20 or 25,000.
Something in between, yeah, that's possible.
And then the requirement I said replant, but in other words, the landscaping requirements, he's got to put a certain number of trees back on the property, and that's still required outside, even if he pays the money. Okay.
But again, he can plant, so I will say a couple things. If he preserves trees that he's not required to, we give credit toward the landscaping. Okay, that'll count for this tree you would have had to plant. And then again, they can plant trees on site, the required ones, and get credit for those. So
Okay.
it's imperfect. It never fully levels the playing field, but we think it comes up.
Gotcha. All right, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, you mentioned the word fairness in your comments, and I'd just like to add, in addition to fairness, is flexibility. And we need a bit of flexibility on this, on the staff standpoint and on the developer standpoint. We didn't have that much before, and I think this adds a good bit of flexibility where we need on these heavily wooded lots.
And again, let me sort of say this. Certainly, I'm not trying to say staff isn't willing to engage in a conversation to say, hey, if we really erred on one, let's have that conversation. But there also needs to be, staff can't be sort of having to explain and justify every single one of these of how we drew the circle. If that's the flip side of it. When you give that discretion, they're going to make a decision, may not have quite been the way everybody else would have done it, particularly if we've got 7 P&Z commissioners and 7 council members and the mayor. It's nobody's going to agree on that all the time, so that kind of comes with it.
If I could too, just being part of the subcommittee, when we talked about this, we didn't go into a lot of depth, a lot of detail in the subcommittee. Pretty much everybody was in agreement. It was a very, very easy consensus that we came to about this subject in particular. The ideal was too that it seemed the old ordinance seemed very unfair to those heavily wooded lots and smaller developments, like those 1 to 10 acre developments. That's really what we were trying to address, is to solve that problem there. The larger developments, it really didn't come into play. It didn't seem like. So that's really what that subcommittee was talking about. I mean, we did talk about tree preservation versus development as well, environmental impacts, that type stuff. But everybody was really in agreement that the old ordinance just seemed a little bit, it went a little too far. And it cost a lot of developers unnecessarily, really, for what we were trying to get to. The old ordinance really was there just in place so people don't come in and clear cut and develop areas. So it went really extreme on the old ordinance, and this is just kind of pulling back a little bit from it, it seems like. So it does seem like it's more fair and balanced.
Yeah, but what we've got left that's treed, it's got very many trees on it, is only going to lend itself to small site development. We do not have any 60, 100-acre tracts of land left that really have a lot of trees on them. Even those up on Interstate 35 and back off of Interstate 35 to the south have been bought and dealt with. So there's not much left there. Everything that we have left that's going to be affected by this will be small acreage, and it's like the land that sets up on 3009 at Weiderstein, where it grows across. The church group that originally bought that wanted to come in and buy up the rest of that, but they didn't buy up the rest of that because they couldn't afford the cost of trees. And it left it for somebody else to come along and buy up and deal with. So what's going to happen if we do this is we're going to wind up encouraging the development within these last tree-covered areas that we have, and the funding that we're going to achieve to hopefully put that money back into trees somewhere else in our city is not going to be there. None of the development on the south side is going to have a tree mitigation problem. Eventually, the development on Weiderstein in the old Weiderstein subdivision between Schertz Parkway and Selma is going to have this problem. But until they finish buying all the lots and aggregating it, it's not a question. But they're biting it off a piece at a time. So you're going to have 5, 10 acres up front along Schertz Parkway that has been bought up. Now it's ready for development. They're going to want to do something with it. Question is, what are we going to do with it? Because there goes our scenery, if you would, along that road, and what has kept us coming into the city on that particular parkway looking very nicely. So I'm all for flexibility, but I don't know that this is the right way to put it out there.
And Commissioner Evans, if I may, and I can certainly appreciate that perspective, and I think you're right, that kind of fundamentally gets to how we approach this ordinance. And I think the feeling is that the amount of tree mitigation required can be so onerous as to significantly restrict the developability of those properties. And the kind of view is that folks should have a certain amount of right to develop properties within a framework that we set up, within zoning, the site plan development regulations, within tree mitigation. So again, not a free-for-all, anybody can do what they want, but we shouldn't hold folks hostage. I think what goes along with that, and you hear from folks on sort of both sides, is one that, yeah, we lose those trees that, yeah, everybody likes coming in. The flip side view of that is it's our view, but it's not our property, it's not our trees, and if it were a high enough priority to the community, then the property could be purchased and preserved for that going forward. And if we're not willing to do that, then I think the other side of it is then we shouldn't hold them hostage, if you will, with that. But I can certainly appreciate, and that's what we hear. I will remind you that that property on the west side between Schertz Parkway and Selma at Weiderstein, that's gone through a rezoning already with the PDD that made special provisions with regard to their tree mitigation. The zoning was approved, and they are in for master planning.
Yes.
They are in for master planning, so you likely will, within the next year, see that preliminary plat and the preliminary plats come through for that development.
And on the east side there, between Schertz Parkway and 3009, are we still working that that property issue between the school district and the city and,
We are, and so this maybe kind of goes to that, and this goes to that philosophical where, and part of it is the unique scenario of that. The school district purchased a lot of those lots for a school. They subsequently realized with changing demographics, they didn't need it. They talked about putting out, and I think did put out to bid, and then sort of realized, well, we kind of struggle both ways. We sell it to somebody, they're going to put in a bunch of homes. Now I got this need for more, I got this more students, but I don't have the school site. I'm kind of creating problems for myself both ways. And I think there is some value acknowledged to those trees and those spaces there. And so what's been discussed with council in the past, and it has been a while, and the school board, and it has been a while in the past, is effectively a deal where the city would take ownership of those properties, the school district would get credit equal to the value of that toward building permit fees. So the city wouldn't have to write a check, but we would forego revenue because frankly, everybody kind of looks when the school district has to build that third high school, those permit fees are going to be huge. And this seems like a win-win for folks in the community kind of going forward. So yeah, that's been talked about. I think what we had happen was, as we were working it, the superintendent announced he was leaving, so it paused. New superintendent came and said, yeah, not the thing I want to deal with. Then we had COVID, not the thing we want to deal with COVID. So we bring it up, and so it would not surprise me that at some point in the near future, we try to consummate that.
and I think the long range, the game plan was that if the city were to acquire that, it'd be preserved as a park.
Yeah, it would be preserved as park open space, things like that. You know, we acquired those lots under the GVs or the
I just have
LCRA easement, so we own where the trail is. Thank you.
one comment and well, maybe a couple of comments. I think what might help, but maybe it's not really required, is if you had some comparative examples of what it costs under the current one and what it would have cost under, to give council members a better idea of the impact.
We can certainly run that through. You know, again, the example we used on a couple of cases is Bush's Chicken, just about an acre. I think they paid $65,000. That would come down. Megan, I don't know if you remember, you looked up Kellen for me at one point and how many acres they
I think the acreage-wise, it was, I'd have to look it up, but the dollar amount was over $250,000.
It was maybe 10.
And that might just help them.
Yeah, we can provide that to council. I know we've talked about it in the past.
And the other thing that isn't entirely relevant to what we're discussing tonight is, as I was reading through, I didn't look ahead, and so I thought I was reading the new one, and what I was actually reading was the current one. But the comment is, in their waivers, I think, and other things go through, are granted by the director of whatever parks and whatever that title is these days. And I thought when we started rewriting the UDC, we were getting away from specific titles just because the city likes to change them.
We are. So now the standard language is the city manager or his or her designee.
Right. And I did see that one or two places in here. So that's just a comment, something to
So
consider.
no, and I will say this, when we come through, because as we do and we've got the RFQ out for the comp plan update and do that, and then the full UDC update, we will clean up all that language.
Okay.
The idea on these, we're just kind of get to the gist of it and not the full review. Once you kind of start that, it just snowballs. But fair point.
Commissioners, anything else? If not, once again, this is a recommendation to City Council to either approve or deny ZC 2022-003.
For lack of motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of the ZC 2022-003 as presented.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll
Second.
second.
Oh,
You're getting slow, Richard. All right, I have a motion to approve from Commissioner Odom, a second from Commissioner Golick. Any further questions or discussion? Call for the vote.
aye.
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 Nay.
Aye. 5 ayes, 1 opposed. Do we need, this isn't really, we don't really need a
We
reason.
don't need a reason
Okay.
for the denial on this one.
I apologize. I thought just in, I think we need to revisit item A because I forgot that staff recommended approval with conditions, and I don't believe Commissioner Odom's motion covered that. So,
We would typically have a motion to reconsider, a second, a vote,
okay.
and then the new motion.
So can we have a motion to reconsider item A?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion we reconsider item 5A.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Evans. Do I have a second? Second from Commissioner Goldick. Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. 6 ayes, none opposed. Okay, so again, my particular concern was with the motion by Commissioner Odom did not include recommending approval with conditions as recommended or something to that. Commissioner Odom, since unless we really need to discuss it again, if you'd like to, you made the original motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of SUP 2021-001 with the recommendations from staff or conditions that were recommended by staff.
All right, I have a commission to recommend approval, a motion to recommend approval with conditions. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Ray. Any discussion? Call for the vote.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, so again, 6 in favor, none opposed, and thank you. I don't know why we missed that the first time, but want to make sure we get it right, so thank you. All right, so item number 6, requests and announcements. Request by commissioners to place items on a future planning and zoning agenda. Anyone have anything? Item B, announcements by commissioners. I will, at this point, Commissioner Hector was approved for, I don't know what the right term is, full membership by City Council. And our other alternate, Mr. Gonzalez, has resigned that position. So we're back to 7 commissioners and no alternates. I talked with City Secretary, and she wants to advertise once again that we have openings and see what she gets. I would also encourage commissioners, if you have anyone that you know of that you think might be interested, encourage them to submit an application to the City Secretary. Anyone else? Announcements by city staff.
So this is for the enterprise located at 17745 Lookout Road. So in the very back of the development, they have lot 13. They came to staff to do a overflow parking area. So it's approximately 12,800 square feet to allow 29 trailer parkings. It's just going to be just for that right now. So that is what we had site plan approved by staff, and that's all that staff has.
All right, thank you. Item number 7 is information available in the planning and zoning packets where staff gives us the current status on issues in front of City Council. And item 8, there being no further business, this meeting's adjourned.